everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream, the stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. I hope everyone's doing well today. Happy 4th of July to all of my fellow Americans and anyone else in the world who happens to celebrate it, I suppose. I'm not doing much today except hanging out and staying cool, and I guess part of staying cool is investigating careers in diversity, equity, and inclusion. What better way to celebrate the birth of our nation than by looking at its slow destruction? Okay, that was melodramatic, but all the same. Hope everyone's doing well again. A few hellos before I get into the meat of the subject here. Mr. Tickle Trunk, hello. Samuel Nation, hello. Funtime Bats, hello. Matt Barnes, hello. Brittany Holland, hello. Spud Gun, hello. Keever Dam, hello. And Portmanteau, hello. Hope everyone's doing well. Kind of a laid-back stream today, obviously, because it's the 4th of July, and why not? But I was thinking today, gosh, what should I talk about? Or I guess the last couple of days. What should be my Sunday stream topic? And I came across this, as Sunday seems to be also panel discussion day sometimes. Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Careers Panel. Now, I have looked at, as many of you may know, several D&I or DEI executives and officers and corporate positions and positions in educational institutions, people who act as the diversity, equity, and inclusion czar for their particular realm. And I've always been fascinated by the fact that almost to a one, none of them ever actually describe what they do in their job the exact same way. Or when they do, very rarely do they get into specifics of how they achieve the goals that are supposedly set out before them. So, in that vein, I was curious to find out from, at least as the image here shows, 4 professionals in the field to describe to us what they do, how they do it, or what they think they do, or hope to achieve. I don't understand it myself, but I seek knowledge and I seek to understand. So I'm glad you're coming along with me on this journey of exploration and discovery. Let's see. Anything else I want to add to make myself sound all intelligent and fancy? I don't think so. How about Decode? Hello. Jaeger Pony. Hello. But let's see. Keeverdam says, because I can do this, and I keep forgetting I can. By the way, had to refresh the page because for some reason the stream didn't start on my end. WTF, LOL. Couldn't tell you. YouTube, the wonderment of YouTube. Hopefully I'm still broadcasting somewhere. Anyway, as per usual, I'll be going for just about an hour and a half, hell or high water. This whole panel discussion lasts about an hour in and of itself. Unless something really grabs me at the halfway point, this will probably be a one-off. But I think by then we should have a good idea of what we're dealing with and hopefully learn something. Maybe, hopefully, either way. But with that, let us begin. I'll start with a few seconds for a sound test, and then we will proceed. The Gay Rascal, hello. And Bubba Hotep, hello. All right, so you guys tell me if you can hear this, and then we will go.
All right, welcome everyone.
Welcome everyone. Is our host using a green screen bookshelf? I can't tell. I need to. There's an aura around her. Okay, I guess we'll find out. Let's see. Sounds good, says Keeverdam. Sounds like freedom, says some Num Num Nation. Star Saver, hello. All right. So let's go.
So glad that you all are here with us. As you all are joining in, feel free to still say hello.
Hello.
Drop that in the chat. Say hi. Tell us where you're joining from. So glad that you could be here.
Yeah, I think she's got one of those Zoom call backgrounds going on, but wait. Okay, so we have like Barbie dolls and I mean books and CDs and stuff and art and another Barbie doll. I don't use Zoom if this is a Zoom call, so I don't know what options you have for backgrounds, but that seems like you might as well just be better off showing your actual background. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
We've got some folks from Northern California. Hello to our neighbors. Good morning from Seattle. Hello, some Seattleites joining in. So I love that. We're going to just dive right in because we've got so much to cover.
Thank goodness you're going to dive right in, because a lot of these panel discussions take so much time with preamble. I'm sure that's not going to happen here
today, and I am just really excited to have these amazing guests on the line with me. So just to introduce myself, my name is Andrea G. Tatum. I am the CEO of AGT Diversity Consulting, which I started last year in the middle of a pandemic. Why not?
Why not? Well, given the amount of money that is floating around there for DEI initiatives and consulting and everything, that's why. So, I guess I should say. Thank you, Matt Barnes. She has the aura of communism. That might be a stretch, but all the same, it's like, why not just? It just seems like such a plain, generic background, but it's got your logo on it, AGT. So she went to the trouble of making a wall full of stuff with her company's, initials on it, just to have it be a green screen background. I don't know why I'm hung up on this. It just seems like so bizarre to me.
But really, I started this business because I was hearing from lots of people who said, I want to learn more about what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. And
no, you started this business to make money. Let's be honest here just for a moment, okay? Whatever, benevolent or altruistic coding you might put on it, you started a business to make money. And there is a lot of money to be made in DEI these days. So, but okay, you tell me, what is diversity, equity, and inclusion? Because I've heard many definitions.
And what would a career in DEI possibly look like? And is that for me?
Okay.
And a lot of times they were coming to me frustrated or saying like, hey, can I just pick your brain about that transition that you made? And so I'm not going to spend a ton of time about me, but my transition was, from working in nonprofit arts, working in theater, working in marketing, fast forward, working in tech, working as a project manager.
I'm not going to talk much about myself, by the way.
Working in events, and then pivoted into a full-time role in diversity, equity, and inclusion. But along the way, that entire time throughout my career, I was always doing DEI work.
Oh, even though you didn't know it? Is she going to say, even though I didn't know it, or I wasn't aware of it, or something? So your background is in the performing arts and marketing. So actively deceiving and or manipulating people. And I'm not putting a moral judgment on those things. Doesn't an actor pretending to be a character does not make them a bad person or something. It's just like, that's your background before you got into DEI. Okay.
Even though I never had that title. So I really wanted to take the opportunity to create this business to help educate people about, one, how to use your own sphere of influence to impact DEI work, and how to also make sure that you're assessing the right role for you if you are really interested. So I'll tell you all a little bit more about my business towards the end and how you all can connect with me through my courses and my career coaching.
Sales pitch. Of course, if she's hosting this, it's her place to make a sales pitch. Let's see. Ex-Bubba Hotep, thank you so much. I'm excited to see how the bottom right guy is going to self-flagellate. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. I guess we'll see what each person has to offer here. And thank you again, Matt Barnes. But enough about me. What do you think of me so far? Well, I mean, it is her show. Okay, I'm not gonna fault her for that. I mean, it's her presentation. She's the host. She's the MC. That's perfectly fine. If I say, hey, go look at my Teespring store in the description below, I'm not going to fault myself for that, right? Would you fault me for that? I hope not. Anyway, okay.
But welcome again to everybody. If you're just joining, say hello in the chat. Tell us where you're joining from. And I'm going to actually have my panelists start to introduce themselves. And what I'm going to ask each panelist to do is tell us about you, tell us about your current role, and how did you end up in the position that you're in now?
Okay, and honestly, this is what I'm curious about, because it seems like with every non-definition of what DEI actually means, you get so many interesting stories of how people arrived at this place, right? Because, like I said, I keep thinking back to one video I did many moons ago, where it was the chief diversity officer of eBay, and he was being interviewed for this, sort of promotional piece on the whole thing, and he was asked, like, what is diversity, equity, and inclusion? And I might be munging things a little bit here, but basically he said, the best thing to do is go to the employees themselves. And what does diversity mean to you? And I've heard that same notion over and over again, where you have someone who is put into a job to conceivably, achieve a goal or fill a purpose in the company. But then more often than not, they take pride in the fact that they have no idea what it is that they're supposed to do. And so they go ask the employees of the company what the definition of their own job description is. That's always fascinated me, just how that dynamic works, because it makes the whole position sound completely like, false. That was my first introduction to DEI executives, is that they don't even know what their job is, and they need to go ask the people that they're supposedly managing what their job is. So that's why I'm always curious where the origin stories of people in these jobs come from.
And so I'm going to actually start with Ashley. I'm going to go in alphabetical order today, starting with first name. So Ashley, why don't you give us a start, and welcome, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone.
Very Truman Show.
I'm Ashley Russell. Pronouns are she and her.
Okay.
Born and raised in Seattle, Washington, and identify as a Black woman.
I'm glad you clarified that for us. I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to approach the question a little bit differently and take you all through my kind of DEI journey, which started when I was actually quite young. I just didn't realize it.
I hear a lot of that. I didn't realize that I was already doing these things that I'm now being paid for. I was just doing it naturally because I was some kind of wunderkind. I was just an ingenue of DEI practices.
I thought I was just doing good work for my community and doing good work that not only fulfilled me, but also really helped flourish, those who look like me and for those who didn't look like me.
Then what's the difference?
So as part of my professional career, I started at AT&T, being a regional program manager. Mm-hmm. And on the side, as part of my volunteer work, I led our Aspire Mentoring Academy. And in that work, I continued my community engagement and found more joy in working with folks from the Boys and Girls Club, from organizations that really were dedicated to providing resources and tools and an outlet for those from underrepresented communities.
Okay, well, I'm not going to fault anybody for doing community outreach work and work with kids and so on and so forth. Thank you, Gay Rascal. Only nebulous goals allow more work to be done. That is also true. If you cannot define when you've achieved the goal, then the goal is endless. And thus your employment is also endless, strange enough. Yeah. Thank you, Gay Rascal.
And I realized at that point I really wanted to pivot. And so I moved to a nonprofit organization similar to you, Andrea. And I worked for several years at Year Up, where I work with young people from, again, underrepresented communities.
Do you have a preference for who you're going to help based on their quote unquote represented status? Interesting. Sar Jim! Hey, Scribe, I finally made it back. Welcome back, Sar Jim. For those of you that don't know, Sar Jim is one of my oldest, and I don't necessarily mean that chronologically as far as his personal age, although I can make assumptions, but also one of my longest viewing audience members. Boy, I constructed that badly. and he's had to take a little bit of a hiatus from things as of late. But I'm glad to see you back, Jim. Glad to see you. Missed your comments on my videos. Always insightful. I have a couple of and not to diminish anybody, but I have a couple of viewers who are ridiculously well informed about many more things than I have any idea about, and they put great supplementary posts in a lot of my videos. You'll see them pinned sometimes of just extra insider perspective on the subjects I'm covering, because I rarely know all that much about the things that I'm looking at. That's why I look at them, because I'm trying to learn something conceivably. And Jim's one of those, and glad to have him around and glad to have him back. Welcome back, Jim. But with all that, tell me more about your outreach work for specific demographics.
And we train them in a variety of technical skills. And I served as kind of the conduit to provide those students with access to internships at major corporations.
Okay.
And unfortunately, at that time, my students would come back to me and say, Ashley, I don't feel like I belong there. I don't feel included. I don't feel valued. What do I do?
Why do they feel that way? I don't know that she's going to answer that question, but I'd like to know, like, in what way did they not feel included / valued or whatever? What cued them in on that?
And so I also really dedicated my time during my role at Year Up to leading our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, and wanting to focus on making sure that my students, especially those from Black and Brown communities, really had the support and guidance that they needed to really flourish in these organizations.
Okay, well, I know it's a little off for me to ask, but why did quote unquote Black and Brown communities need special support? And I'm not being facetious when I ask the question. I am honestly curious from her perspective, why?
And then in the words of Karen Fleshman, I decided towards the end of my time there, that I wanted to change the corporations to make sure that they fit for young people of color versus changing young people of color to fit the corporations.
Okay, I'd love to know how that's supposed to work.
And so after that, I transitioned to working at Nordstrom, leading our diversity strategy there, and now doing the same at Amazon.
Oh, you work at Amazon now? Okay, I just did a video, last week or the week before on affinity groups at Amazon. Except they weren't affinity groups so much as they were ERGs, but kind of the same thing, depending. But okay. I wonder. This lady wasn't on the panel from the ERG thing, was she? I don't know.
And wanting to share with you all today that the common thread throughout my career has been wanting to provide access to opportunity and wanting to help you all in whatever way I can to let you know that you can follow a similar path as mine or not a similar path as mine, and you can still get to the goal that you want. It may take time, and as long as you're willing to put in the time, you will get there.
The thing that always strikes me about diversity, equity, and inclusion, theories or movements or initiatives, is just how very exclusive their focus is on particular demographics versus others. It kind of belies the idea that everything's about inclusion and diversity, but I think we'll probably see that as we go.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I love that. And before everybody joined onto the webinar, I was telling the rest of the panelists that Ashley and I met through a mutual connection because of Year Up. And during some of my time at Tableau, I had the opportunity to volunteer there and to speak and to just provide information to some of the youth who are participating about, like, what does tech life look like and what does it mean to...
It means sitting in front of a screen a lot of the time. But hey, who doesn't do that these days, whether they're in tech or not, right?
To work in these big tech companies. And it was just such a fulfilling opportunity. And I just want to give a little nod and shout out to Year Up. If it's an organization you're not familiar with, I highly recommend that you just check it out, learn more about it, as they're doing some really phenomenal work. So
Year Up. Okay, I will keep that in mind. Perhaps I will try to find something on that in the future, because now I am curious, given what I've been told.
thank you for that, Ashley. So I'm gonna hop over to Dan. And Dan, if you want to give a little intro, tell us about you and your journey into the work that you do.
I gotta say, Dan's hair is an amazing structure. I mean, just like this perfect little half dome. I don't know how one achieves that.
Sure. Well, thank you and greetings, everyone. It's lovely to be here with you virtually. My name is Dan or Danny Eagle. I use he and him pronouns, and I am based in Washington, D.C.
Oh, my gosh.
I grew up in a multicultural home. So my mom's family is Cuban and my dad's family is Jewish and from Eastern Europe. And so having multiple languages at home, multiple cultural connections to different parts of the world from a very young age made me really question, where is home? What does community look and feel like, particularly when people who I'm closest to, perhaps relationally, live on the other side of the planet in some cases?
Home presumably is your family, you know, the coming together of your mother and your father, and that their differences didn't mean anything next to their care and love for one another. So that's what that looks like, I would assume. I mean, I don't know. Where do you belong? Wherever you find yourself, I suppose.
And having family members on either side of my family who actually cannot speak to each other because they don't have a shared language.
Yeah, I don't know if our speaker knows this, but you'd be surprised how many times families split up between marriage who can speak the same language have no ability to communicate with each other. But that's just me being silly.
And so for me, I had no concept around language of DE&I. It was just something that I was naturally gravitating towards in terms of my lived experience. And when I went to college, I was very fortunate to go to a small liberal arts college in Vermont named Middlebury College, which my grandparents call Blueberry College. That's fine. But one of the things I think was most powerful about my time there was that I graduated in 2013, and my class year was the first school's year in over 200 years of history where the students who came from public school, including myself, was in the same representation of students from private schools.
Okay, well, that's more of a class thing. All right.
And the school's tuition at that time was close to, I think, about $55,000-$60,000, and I'm sure is more now.
Whoa.
And so by virtue of being on any financial aid in the school, you were in the small minority of students because only a third of students received any sort of financial aid to go to school there. And so I began to understand class in a very different way. And it was actually my 3 work-study jobs that I had while I was at school that really put me on this path to doing this work in a formal way, even though I still didn't have language for even knowing that this is a professional path that I could pursue.
Yeah, so again, you hear this a lot where I've been doing this work my entire life, even though I didn't know it, even though my background and my situation is drastically different from this other person over here. I was doing the same thing. It's interesting that he brings up class, though, because you don't usually hear about class when talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sometimes you'll hear about economic disparity and things like that, but it's not usually the go-to thing. So I'm wondering. I'm not quite sure what I'm wondering yet. I'm wondering where he's going, I suppose.
So I worked at the admissions office on campus for all 4 years and began to understand institutional gatekeeping and selection processes.
Okay, institutional gatekeeping selection processes. All right, well, I hope he goes into that some more. Thank you, Matt Barnes. Oh no, Middlebury College. I could go on for hours about that place if you want brain aids. I've never, if I've heard of it, I haven't heard anything about it. I don't know anything about Middlebury College. So that'd be a good play. Here's the thing, since Sar Jim was here before, Matt Barnes, this would be a good spot when you have time to put a comment in the video once comments are available to be put into the video, and give a little summary of Middlebury as a supplemental to the video, because God knows I don't know anything about it. So there you go. Thank you, Matt Barnes. And so your admissions process and gatekeeping and so on and so forth. Of course, none of that happens in the companies that you guys work for now. There's no filtration process on the basis of things that are irrelevant to someone's merit or anything, right?
I worked at the Americans with Disabilities Act office, providing disability accommodations and services to students who have disabilities. And other than my glasses, I identify as someone who's currently able-bodied. So that also really opened my world.
You identify as someone who is able-bodied aside from your glasses. Well, how far could you get without your glasses? But okay. All right. So you're just throwing away. All right. Now, all my sort of cynicism aside for a moment, I don't begrudge anybody here working to help out people that need help. Okay. Like Americans with disabilities, people who are actually in financial straits or anything else. That's fine. And perfectly honorable. The thing that I always get suspicious about, though, is something more detrimental taking place while it is cloaked in something that is plainly charitable. That's always a thing. It's like, okay, you're doing a lot of good work, but then you whittle everything down to an initiative that focuses on things that don't actually matter, right? Someone's skin is not a situation they are in unless you make it so, if you get my meaning.
And I did academic research at a center on campus that was focused explicitly on race and ethnicity. And so the combination of those things, plus my interests in personal life, started to naturally, I think, pull me towards this world. And I was very fortunate while at school to have a professor who said, you need to go work at this organization in DC that I know about. Let me connect you. And of course, it's one of the many privileges of going to schools like that is the relational aspect of what opportunities become accessible to you. And it was a DEI consulting firm called Cook Ross in Washington, DC.
Aha. All right. Thank you again, Ex Bubba Hotep. Without my glasses, I can see the big E. Can I identify as disabled? That's always thought. It's like, now, as far as disabilities go, simply having bad eyesight is probably not exactly the worst one you could come up with. But all the same, it's like, if we didn't have glasses, I've always been sort of like morbid about it. It's like, if evolution was allowed to proceed as it should without the intervention of technology and humankind and everything else, I probably wouldn't exist because of my bad eyesight. But, a couple of wires and a couple of pieces of glasses on my face, and suddenly I'm effectively just about as a functional an adult and a human being as anybody else. So can't begrudge science, but I always wonder about the ravages of nature if it were let to go on its own merry way.
And so that's where I had my first 5 years of professional life. It was where I learned to see this work as a discipline and to see it be implemented in lots of different kinds of organizations. And I'll say briefly now, and we can talk about it more over the course of our conversation, that time really informed the work that I do today as the executive director of a new nonprofit called Inclusion Next Work, or INW.
So we got two people who are running their own, nonprofits in that sense, but I presume they're still drawing a paycheck.
Whose mission is to connect, support, and elevate the next generation of leaders who are doing DEI work.
And okay, I have to ask the question then, what criteria qualifies someone for your assistance to elevate them to the next level of DEI work? Because you guys keep bringing it up, I gotta ask.
And so we do that through leadership and community development work, as well as by providing young folks with hands-on paid professional development opportunities through the form of consulting projects. So we support a number of nonprofits across the country doing this work and have avenues for people to learn from one another, to learn from experts in the field, and actually to use opportunities like this to get their hands in the field, so that as you're looking for jobs and people are saying you must have 12 years of experience and those jobs didn't exist at those organizations 12 years ago, you at least can have tangible things to say. And I may not have been a DEI manager or ERG leader, but I've done assessments, I've helped facilitate focus groups, I've helped develop strategy, I've worked on coaching models and training and facilitation. And so I'm more than happy to talk about those things and other aspects over the course of today, and I'm grateful for the time. But I want to turn things over so you all get to hear from Rohini too.
Wow, it's very gracious of you. What exactly do you do? It sounds like DEI work is the goal in and of itself, right? Where we're going to elevate leaders to do more DEI work. Okay, well, what does DEI work entail? What you come into a company and you are the new DEI executive officer or whatever. What are you looking to do? What is the problem you are there to address? And then how do you address it? Hearing all this stuff and descriptions in broad terms are great, but I have no idea still, what do you do and how do you do it? I hope we get there. That's why I'm doing this.
Thank you so much, Dan. And yes, and so definitely I recommend checking out Inclusion Next work. Even with the work that I do in wanting to support people who are interested in getting into DEI.
But I'm not going to talk much about myself. I know. She has a pass. It's her channel. It's her show, but all the same.
I love what Inclusion Next work is doing, and have been really excited to partner with them, and have been on some panels and attended some of their events. And
what do they do? Like at the bare bones, at the end of the day, what is it that they do, and what are the results they produce? I really hope we get to that point.
And just really love the conversations and work that they are bringing to other young people who are working in wanting to work inside of this space. So thank you so much for that, Dan, and taking us on your journey. And with that, I want to also introduce Rohini and bring her to the table, my virtual stage today. So tell us all about your journey and kind of a little bit about the work that you're doing now and that pivot that you've made recently.
Yeah, well, you already know what's going on. No spoilers or nothing. Yes, tell us about the work that you're doing and your pivot. And please get to the point where you tell us what you are doing, not the high-level adjectives of it all.
Yes. So the pronouns I use is she and her.
Oh, thank goodness for that.
And I was born in India. And 15 years is when I moved to US.
And all of that says what? At all. That few last couple of sentences could apply to millions of people. And
that's really when my journey of being lost started. Being an immigrant and coming to US. And when I started going into college and corporate world, I was in limbo.
You were in limbo in college and corporate world. Well, not knowing exactly what you mean by limbo, I can tell you that when I was in college and then the corporate world, I was also in limbo because I had absolutely no idea either what I was doing or what I wanted to do thereafter, because it was all very new to me, both college and then being in the corporate setting. So I guess we're kindred spirits.
And I was surviving. To survive, I became a yes person.
Well, you wouldn't be the first, nor will you be the last.
And through that, there's this word that comes for me, dignity was lost.
Okay.
So when I was in the corporate world, I've noticed that there were similar stories to mine. And organically, I started pivoting towards voices being heard. And it was just a very simple, small act of putting panels together. If there was an offsite, working with leaders and saying, hey, I would love to have a panel, can I have a platform for stories to be heard?
And obviously, every time you asked or suggested that happen, you were denied the opportunity because they don't want voices to be heard, which is the problem that you saw in the first place, right? So you were never allowed to have a panel or to discuss anything or to say anything, right?
That was the first step. The second step was finally when I got a seat at the table.
Oh, you got a seat at the table where voices aren't being heard or want to be heard? Okay.
This analogy of Thanksgiving, you're getting an invitation to Thanksgiving.
I don't know if Thanksgiving is necessarily the best analogy you want to take here, given the historical truth, as we know.
You're told you get to sit at the kids' table versus the adult table. That's exactly what it felt like. When I was in the room, it was almost like go sit at the kids' table.
So you felt that way. Okay. Did people talk to you that way? Or are you projecting? Because I'm getting hints so far that you're really projecting out your own insecurities on the rest of the world.
For me, the big word is respect.
I thought the big word was dignity.
Lack of, when you're finally in the room.
Well, here's the thing. Respect has to be earned. You know, being given the opportunity to do something or to be in the room with other people doesn't automatically qualify you to have the respect of the people in the room. I don't know if you know that that's how that works. And by the way, that is not limited to any particular color or gender. But okay.
And organically, the program of mentoring, coaching, and making sure there's allyships and advocates to make sure there was an even field for everybody in the room started. And that work organically started for me when I was in corporate world.
Okay, and just as a note, the sound quality on this particular part, I don't have any control over. I boosted all the audio on the recording and tried to even it out and everything, but you know, each web camera is going to do what it's going to do. So if it's hard to hear right now, I apologize. I don't have any control over that.
Last but not least is often when I was working with leaders, because I was a people partner, I would see unfairness.
You would see unfairness? Oh no, are you saying we live in a world?
Leaders that have connections, their kids would get internships automatically.
Oh, nepotism because of favorite status of things? Okay, well, no, that's not necessarily fair. It all depends, I suppose. You could have a cousin or a son or a daughter or something who's actually qualified and just happens to be the sibling or the child or whatever of someone in charge. But nothing in DEI practices has any elements to it that could be considered either favoritism or nepotism or any kind of discrimination, right?
Or get the platform to follow someone and learn more. And for me, the word fairness sticks out, and that was really deep-rooted for me. So programs around first-generation college students organically started for me in corporation.
So you started discriminating opportunities. Okay, all right. So nepotism's bad, favoritism's bad, but over here, we're going to take this category of people and say that they deserve special attention. Okay, just want to make sure I understand your complaint.
And incorporating that in the processes and systems.
So systemic discrimination. Okay, thanks.
Doing that, the pull towards DEI was happening, and I started working with corporations on establishing and making the sad word business case. I shouldn't be a business case of why it's an essential breathing element.
Yes, why is a business case an essential breathing element of a corporation or a business? I can't imagine why. I mean, obviously, it's not my money I have to spend on programs and initiatives that may or may not actually result in any benefit for the company, but I'm going to do them anyway. Why should there be a business case? Why should I have to prove to the people that write the checks that they should spend the money on this thing you want to do when it's the money of the company that's going to be funding your project? What an evil notion. Why should I have to make the business case? Well, okay, what is it you want to do? How does it benefit the company? I hate to tell you this, just speaking pragmatically, because the bottom line matters with a company, with a business. They are not there simply to facilitate your personal likes and dislikes. They are there to enrich the shareholders and the people in the company. I know. It's a crazy notion.
For an organization. And the pivot happened to me just starting my own organization.
Oh, okay. Well, see, now there you go. You start your own organization. You can set your own goals. And then, you know what? I bet that in your organization, if someone comes to you with an idea, do you ever ask them how that's going to benefit the organization? Because if you do, you better not ask them to make a business case for how you want to spend your time and money of your organization's resources. You better not.
Called Arcus Consulting. So I do ERG coaching, executive coaching, but also do DEI consultation.
Okay, for those of you that can't hear, and I apologize, the sound on this particular webcam is terrible. She does DEI consultation and ERG consultation. I'm not going to try to narrate everything she says, but that moment was particularly quiet.
And really making sure companies are weaving in their values and their DNA to their DEI.
Weaving in their values and their DNA into their DEI. Well, what if their value is getting the most return for their shareholders and therefore everything that they do requires a business case? What do you do then?
And not just copycatting. Like, I like what that organization did. I'm going to take that and slap it onto my DEI strategy. That is not how it works.
Okay, how does it work?
People are different. Leaders are different.
Yeah.
The cultural aspect of it, the global aspect of it. So I do a lot of work on DEI strategy and making sure that it speaks, it has a voice, and it is unique to the organization. And it's
okay. What does that mean? I mean, yes, every business is different. If you go in and you're trying to be an efficiency expert, let's say, for a particular business, you have to learn what the business does. How do they do it? Where are the weak points or the things that could be tightened up, and on and on. Yes, everybody's different. Every business is different. And yet you vilify the notion of the business case, where I think you'll probably find that most businesses share that concern. I am direly curious to know how she handles justifying things to a business that are concerned with their spending.
It's really focusing on the systems and processes.
Uh-huh.
I love it. And you just said something that just made me kind of want to just kind of dig into that a little bit more, which is this idea that, right, like the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion is not one size fits all.
Of course it's not. Of course it's not. But you're not even telling us what it is to begin with. So tell us, how is it not one size fits all where everybody has an opportunity to make a buck off of this stuff? Thank you again, X-Bubba Hotep. People like this is why I have a slam forehead here for stress relief on a concrete block wall at my job. Well, I'll tell you what, you do that often enough and everything is going to become very, very simple for you very quickly. But please don't. Yeah, you see, this is our previous speaker, the upper left-hand corner. I forget her name. I apologize. She's one of those figures that I would love to be able to ask direct questions of after she's made statements like that. Like, because in my mind, I'm just like, how does that work? And maybe there's an answer. Here's the thing. I don't know. This is what's so frustrating about some of these things where you don't have any interaction. Maybe in this summary, there's an answer to my question. Whether or not it makes sense to me or I agree with it or whatever, maybe there's an answer to be had. But because everything's so generalized and abstract and just kind of washed over, almost to a one, I never find out, which is, like I say, kind of frustrating.
Right. Oftentimes people say, oh, we have to have ERGs. We have to have this group. We have to do this thing because we see these other companies who are doing it. And you see oftentimes like what's pushed via social media, because that's actually what companies are willing to even put out there.
Well, then what is a diversity, equity, and inclusion process? Right? I mean, if it's not ERGs, if it's not these other elements that you see in other companies as they practice them, well, then what is it? How do you assess a company for what it needs for DEI? I presume, and I know I'm stretching and just saying that word, I presume there's at least a template that you come into with, or some kind of assessment process where you say, the size of this company is X, and so ERGs don't make any sense because you don't have enough employees to justify ERGs, right? Okay, I could accept that, right? If you have a gigantic company with all sorts of people all over the place, at least in the world of DEI, maybe ERGs make sense. Okay. Are you going to tell us that that's what you're looking at? Or thank you, Mr. Tickle Truck. If there's one solution, we can't individually grift. That is also true. That is also true. My expertise cannot be rightly monetized if anybody can do it with a one-off plan. This is also true.
Versus the other thing that you mentioned, which is the strategy, the actual strategic approach that it takes to make real change inside of those organizations.
What needs to be fixed? I really hope they give us a hypothetical, like company X has this problem and it needs to be fixed, and this is how you fix it. I hope.
That's oftentimes happening behind the scenes. The reason you're being asked for a business case, the process of creating that strategy, all of that is oftentimes not what's being told, the story that's being told.
What?
And so a lot of times in the work that we do,
yes,
the thing that is a change isn't necessarily the most like glamorous thing that's ever happened. And sometimes it is.
Like what? Please stop speaking in abstractions. Give us an example, an active example, even if it's a hypothetical one or one that you sort of, craft together from different experiences. Just what do you mean? Please.
But I'd love to maybe start with you, Rohini, to talk about, because it's not always so glamorous or it's not always social media appropriate, maybe what's one thing that...
Whoa, wait a second. What? It's not social media appropriate? What does that mean?
In the course of your career and thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion work that you're most proud of that you've been able to accomplish?
Okay. All right. I appreciate that question. Get a specific example. All right. So our speaker has been posed, or challenged, I should say, to give us a specific example of a problem she solved in her work. All right. Go.
I would say the biggest example that comes to me is giving a voice to the voiceless.
Oh, for crying out loud. Or not, as the case may be. Yes, that is a good answer. No. What do you mean? How did you do that?
That was very, very important to me. And that's what I'm most proud of. And you were absolutely right. It was work that I did behind the scenes.
What does that mean? Giving a voice to the voiceless. How did that work? That's not an example. That is a notion. What?
Saw me as the voice. It was everybody that was on the stage and their stories that they saw the voice of. So it was a program called Hear Our Voices.
A program called Hear Our Voices. That's not on the nose a little bit, but okay. You started a program in a company, I'm assuming, called Hear Our Voices. All right. And these voices, presumably, were not being heard prior to this. I guess I'll just have to take your word on that one.
And it was a story of each employee from different demographic, different ethnicity, different economic status that they were able to share. And what it created was a humanistic connection.
A humanistic connection. Okay. Here's my question, and I know it's going to be a terrible one to ask. How did this program, again, and I'm assuming because she hasn't said, but how did this program that you initiated within a company increase the company's fortunes? What did it do? What did hearing the voices of people's stories, etc., what did that have to do with their jobs or their job performance? Was it merely a company morale exercise? What did this serve to the ends of benefiting the company? I know I'm being very dry and pragmatic in asking that question, but aside from serving your own ego, what did it do to benefit the company?
Which we forget. Ultimately, that's the goal of DEI. We are all human, and there's that connection that we need to embrace.
The goal of DEI is to let people know that we are all human. Really. It's not about increasing quotients of demographics in a company or favoring certain demographics over others as needing special help, because I've been hearing that this whole time too. But no, it's just simply coming down to recognizing that we're all human, because prior to your arrival, people in the company that you came to help didn't understand that people were human. They saw people, again, I'm assuming, who aren't white as non-human. Really? Okay.
Well, and the reason I'm really proud of is the biggest lesson that I learned from it.
Oh, the biggest thing you're proud of was what you've gained from it, not what, okay.
Is really listen to understand.
Oh.
Listen to the stories, listen to the pain.
Well, hey, I'm right on that same page with you. I listen to understand. I'm really, really trying to understand. Really trying.
It's not about you. It's about really hearing that voice and listening to understand.
It's not about you. Well, you haven't told us how anything you've done has helped anyone or improved the company. You guys do consult for companies, right? You're there to eventually serve the company's needs and goals. But you're proud of giving a voice to the voiceless. Whatever that means.
I had an aha moment, and I know many others did, and that was the proudest program, I think, that I will always remember.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sharing what? Okay, what did it mean to not have a voice before you showed up? All right. What did having a voice do after this happened? How did that change things at the company? You want to talk about, you want to change the company in order to fit the people rather than the people changing to fit the company. Okay, how did that change company policy? How did that improve the outlook for the company? How did that improve the quality of life of the employees? I mean, was it just a one-off? Did it become standard practice? What are the results of it? Am I just on another planet here thinking that these are important questions to answer or to describe when you're talking about your successes in doing this job? Thank you, Ex-Bubba Hotep. Here is how an example works. Give me an example of a bad experience at work. Well, one time I had a guy yell at me for 30 minutes because there were puddles in the parking lot while it was raining. Yeah. And then the next step is, okay, you've described the problem. Now, how would you solve this problem? And then, how effective was your solution to solving that problem? I always get a little suspicious when somebody's asked for an example and they give me an abstraction that doesn't answer anything, because then I have to wonder, do they have an actual example?
Same question for you, Ashley. In the course of your journey, what's something that you can say that you're most proud of that you've been able to accomplish?
Okay, round two.
Yeah, I would say just my ability to really change the culture. I was given the advice at a very young age that I should leave my fingerprints on the business wherever I go. And as you heard from my introduction.
So it's all about you so far? Okay.
I've been to several places over the years.
Yeah, like George Washington slept here kind of thing? Okay, so you want to leave your mark wherever you go. All right.
And so I've kind of carried that along with me. And so my driver has been knowing that even the small changes that I'm able to implement will have long-lasting change and effect way, way after I leave the organization.
Such as?
And what I know is that I'm helping to build an inclusive and equitable workplace for those who look like me, those from marginalized communities, and for all employees, right?
No. You can't have it both ways. It's not for specific racial demographics that look like me and for all employees. Okay, that doesn't sound inclusive at all. That sounds very divisive. But Okay. How have you done that? I'll set aside the very self-centered, I want to leave my fingerprints everywhere I go, which, anyway, that sounds kind of messy. But either way, okay, how have you done that? What have you implemented? What company? Okay, even if you don't name the company, describe company X before you arrived and then after you did your work. What does that look like? What does that mean?
Because once we fix it for the most marginalized, we fix it for everyone. Right?
Once you fix it for the quote unquote most marginalized, you fixed it for everyone. Okay. How? How did you fix a company for the most marginalized? And I know I can't help myself in these situations, obviously, because I'm frustrated and I'm sounding condescending, but I'm honestly curious to know, not being facetious. All right, you came into company X and company X was like this, and it was doing a disservice to marginalized communities. And then you did this to change it, and now it's no longer a problem. You can at least give us that kind of example, can't you? Won't you?
Right. And so I really enjoy just being able to be the catalyst for change for the many organizations I've been a part of, whether they want to,
Well, presumably they want to because they are conceivably hiring you to do what you do, and you're really in love with what you do because you're the one doing it. So, can you give us an example of the kind of pushback you've received to your proposed initiatives or changes? Something.
See it as that or not, because like you all mentioned, there's no one size fits all approach. It's going to take some time to really make huge improvements.
Then, okay, what was a problem and how did you improve it?
But for me, it's making those small shifts, those small changes, and knowing that it just feels different in the company and within the organization I'm in.
It feels different. No, come on. We're not dealing on the psychic plane here. Okay, maybe you are, but a business is not. A business has brought you in for whatever reason to solve a problem, right? Or to get some help, or to get a new perspective on something, whatever it is. Because ultimately, the business feels that they would benefit, or that there is a conceivable benefit to having you come in and do whatever you're going to do. So, presumably, there was here's where the company is at financially before I arrived, and here is where they are after my work has been implemented. And I can see tangible changes to the company's output or fortunes or whatever. We're not dealing in psychic powers here. Now, if you are dealing in psychic powers, I have to question whether or not a company would be well advised to hire you to help them with their business processes. Because there is a process somewhere in there, and it produces tangible results of a kind.
I'm super proud of. And so it's not necessarily something that I can attach to one thing.
You can't attach it to one thing. You don't have one active example in your career thus far that you can point to and say, I did a thing and this is the benefits that resulted from it. Even if it's a small thing. I mean, hell, small changes can divert entire nations. So I'm fine with just telling us a small thing. But you can't get more specific than that? You can't? Really? Thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk again. She fixed its chi by moving the thought furniture. Again, you're not wrong. If you're not going to tell me what you did and it's all based on feelings, well, and I guess I can't disprove that. Also, Chat Mort is in the chat. Everybody say hello to Chat Mort because I'm pretty sure she'll blush at all the attention. And also, Sinatra Says is in the chat. Say hello to Sinatra Says because he'll probably have some sort of vascular reaction to all the attention. See how I said the same thing but changed it a little bit and has a completely different meaning. All right. You going to give us a specific somewhere in here? Probably not.
One program. It's just a feeling that I feel like I'm able to implement wherever I go.
No, I totally get that. And
You totally get what? She didn't say anything. Oh, if I didn't know that all 4 of these people worked in the corporate sphere, I would suspect they work in the corporate sphere.
I feel that I often call them my tiny wins. I don't
like
know. I think
what?
there's somewhere along the way, reading some magazine, it was like celebrate the tiny wins. And that just really resonated with me.
Yeah, jump for joy over mediocrity. Yay!
And sometimes in the work, you're having to kind of take a dual path, if you will.
Okay.
Right? Like you've got these big systemic changes and policies that you're really trying to change.
Like?
And that takes time.
No kidding. And presumably you're being compensated for this time. So what does that look like?
It does not happen, at just the flick of a switch. You've got to go through legal, go through processes. But
legal, like what? Oh my God. The lack of specificity, I swear, it is probably the bane of my existence in everything that I encounter. If you're going to talk about something, abstractions work to a certain point. But when you get down to it, why aren't you saying something specific? I did this thing, or part of my process is going into a company and assessing it for these criteria. Something, anything. Is that so difficult? I guess. Thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk. I want to get paid to make immeasurable differences. I know. I mean, nice work if you can get it. Man, I don't know if I could keep a straight face doing this kind of quote unquote work though, Then
sometimes it feels like the work is being stalled because again, right? Like it's not out in the forefront. But
well, I don't know. What is the goal that you have set or the company has set for you? And then what is the timeline of achieving that goal based on the obstacles in the way? You have a process for assessing this company to company, right? Okay, DEI is different for every company. Got it. I understand. I appreciate that, right? Okay. But you must come in with some process of assessment. Yes? You come in and say, what is the size of the company? How many employees are there? If we're going to be focusing so much on racial and ethnic demographics, obviously you're going to have to do a poll of that or some kind of survey. You have a process to at least get yourself to the starting point of what you're going to do in your work. There has to be a common denominator somewhere in there, right?
To your point, sometimes those small things, those tiny wins that you can communicate out broadly and talk about, make it feel like the work is continuous. So
yeah. Well, the work has to be continuous or you don't have a job, right? So if you mark up tiny wins, whatever that means, as wins, and you can say, hey, I'm making progress by inches, where's my paycheck?
So it is sometimes this duality that has to happen.
What duality? Where's the other side of this?
In order for the work to continue to grow and for people to feel invested in it.
Right.
Because it's very easy to say, well, if I don't see it, I don't believe it's actually happening.
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that. Someone who's paying you to achieve an end in a company wanting to see results. Oh, what a burden that is in the world. Wanting to see that the money they are spending is getting them the result that they want. I never tell this anecdote or this joke or whatever correctly, but the drill bit, right? It's like, I'm not going to the hardware store paying for a drill bit. I am paying for a result. I mean, that drill bit, I don't care what the drill bit looks like, as long as it makes the size hole I need over and over and over again. I am paying for a result. I'm not paying for you. I'm not paying for you to feel good about yourself. I am paying for a result. So I have to ask, again, what is the result they expect of you? And how did you achieve it? Or if you did not achieve it, why didn't you achieve it? And how did you take that information to refine your process going forward? Is this so much to ask from 4 different DEI professionals? Maybe? Thank you again, ex-Bubba Hotep. We are going to change things legally if only I knew what we had to change. I'm reminded of a Simpsons episode, quote, I'm making record time now if only I had a place to go. Right. If you never, ever, ever define the goal, then you never, ever stop trying to get there. And thank you, Lancelot652. This video is going to drive Scribbles to drinking. No, I have been challenged much more mightily in the past, as many of you know. All the same, it's always a new set of people. Except in rare instances, I never go back to the same speaker twice because I know what I'm going to hear, unless there is the same person tackling a different topic, maybe. Because you never know who's going to say what next, and it's always a different story. It's always interesting, even if the parts that are frustrating end up being the same.
But those sometimes tiny wins can feel like they're moving mountains for some people.
As long as I fool myself into thinking I'm making tectonic level shifts in the world with tiny little wins, I feel justified in what I'm doing.
Because you just never know how something very small can really impact someone in a huge way.
No. You have to know. You have to find out. You have to see the result. You have to be able to show that you've made progress. It's not a never know. You must know by now how a tiny win in your case has led to a major shift. You can give us an example, conceivably.
Right, because everyone has their own aha moment, like Rohini mentioned.
My aha moment was take on me.
And you don't know when it will happen, or you don't know what's the one thing that'll actually cause it to happen in folks. And so exactly for me, if it's one individual at a time that makes them open their eyes, have that social awakening, that now is the time to really, really take care of your people.
So are you a corporate counselor? You work on an individual basis? What did that mean? I still don't know what you do or how you do it.
No matter what background they're from is really important to me.
Is it really important to you? Because you seem to be focusing on very specific backgrounds and then trying to say that you focus on all backgrounds, except that you don't.
Yeah. And Dan, I'm gonna, you can answer this too, but I want to pivot into a second question. And if you want to weave this in, but I mean, because of the work that you do, and obviously you all work with a lot of aspiring, and you all use the word ideas, which I really, really love the word ideas.
I really love the word substantive, Irate Bear. That doesn't mean anything. Well, not really.
That acronym.
That acronym? Did I? Okay. Well, okay. I step back. Did I miss something? Is the word ideas also an acronym for something, or did I miss that? Did they go over that? Okay. Now maybe I'm off base.
I'm sure you often get people who are like, "Can I pick your brain? Can I ask you questions? I want to know more about this work." And
this work.
In your career, and having kind of been in that consulting world, and then working in these different variety of things, what is something that you would say, what is something you often share with people who are saying, like, I want to make this transition, who want to pick your brain about what does it mean to get into this work?
Okay, that's not at all about the specifics of what you do, but all right, at this point, beggars can't be choosers. I'll take anything that gives me some idea of your process, sort of.
Yeah, thank you, Andre. It's a great question. And actually, as I was thinking about my answer to your first question, I'm glad that they both will hopefully apply.
Yeah.
And just for folks who are listening in, IDEAS is the acronym we use for inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and social justice.
Okay. Now this might be the one thing that made all of this worth it. I've learned something new. I hadn't heard that before. I had not heard of that before. Just like, recently we had, it was just D ampersand I, right? That's how things started. It was diversity and inclusion. Then they added equity and it became DEI, right? And recently someone said, no, it's justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, or JEDI, which really makes me cringe because please do not pollute Star Wars any further than it already has by Disney. But now we have ideas. And what was ideas again?
What is something that you would say, what is something you often share with people who are saying, like, I want to make this transition, who want to pick your brain about what does it mean to get into this work?
Yeah, thank you, Andre. It's a great question. And actually, as I was thinking about my answer to your first question, I'm glad that they both will hopefully apply.
Yeah.
And just for folks who are listening in, IDEAS is the acronym we use for inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and social justice.
Inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and social justice. Okay, that, if nothing else, I can come away from this learning that. Okay, I'll have to look out and see if I can find that elsewhere later on.
For us, we want to make sure that particularly acknowledging the disability rights and liberation movement that we're talking about, that aspect of the conversation, which we feel like is most often left out, but also in a broad interpretation of what access means, access in terms of what language we're using. We're obviously having this conversation in English, but there are perhaps languages that would be more comfortable or preferred for us to do that. We're connecting via technology, so people have the infrastructure and ability to use technology. We're working across multiple time zones on this call, so is there time access depending on where we are in our days? So for us, that's really important.
Can you address all of these things all of the time? Okay, all right. Well, that's what access means. Okay, and
as Rohini mentioned earlier, yes, certain organizations may be doing this work because there is a financial impact.
Yes, I think most companies would be doing whatever they're doing because there's a financial impact, because time is money. Okay, and I understand there are things called nonprofits out there. And if you're working with nonprofits, then maybe it's not as much of a concern, but all the same, even nonprofits have a budget. Even nonprofits do not have unlimited resources. If you're going to implement something, making use of people's time or whatever in the company to achieve something, there is a financial consideration, a business case, even if the business is a nonprofit. So why does this constantly seem like some kind of alien concept as we go forward, that the idea that a business would be concerned with the finances of what you're proposing, as though that's something that what shouldn't be there or is wrong to be there? That is so bizarre.
But for us, it's about creating a society that's more just, and so we want to make that pretty explicit.
Okay, you want to create a society that's more just, but you don't want to concern yourself with the financial cost. So is it just, I don't know, I have to ask the question. Are your corporate clients, in your eyes, simply walking wallets to implement social ideology within the corporate structure that you prefer? Now, for those of you out there that listen to a lot of my videos, you may think that I'm asking that facetiously. I'm being a little sarcastic. And I wouldn't blame you if you thought that. But I'm asking honestly, because if you're not going to concern yourself, or you think that concerns about the financial cost of what you're trying to implement in these companies should not be any kind of consideration or concern by the companies, well, then what exactly is your concern otherwise? Because you're not leaving me a whole lot of options. Thank you, Inhuman Form, Social Criticism and Psychology. Happy 4th, Scribe. Happy 4th of July to you, Formy. For those of you that don't know, Inhuman Form runs his own YouTube channel going over, well, social criticism and psychology. Even though he is forcefully moving away from it, if you do appreciate the Jim Can't Swim style of analysis, I definitely encourage you to go check out his channel and his content. He has some Jim Can't Swimmy type stuff there, but he also has other things that he's worked on very hard that you should take a look at. And there you go. And thank you again. And happy 4th. And if I hadn't said it before, and I think I did, but I haven't said enough, happy 4th of July, everyone, because this is a special day.
So with all that said, when people ask me about my work and how to get involved, the thing that for me is most important is the ability to build authentic and sustainable relationships.
Okay.
And I think those are the things that I'm most proud of, both with my own team of colleagues who I work with, as well as the people who participate in our programs. And there's certainly a trade-off between depth of relationship and the amount of relationships you can hold. And so I know that the kind of impact we have may have certain limitations, but I'd rather us build really deep and sustained relationships with fewer organizations and fewer folks, but know that they are having the kind of impact we want.
Okay, so you're really proud of how much you're able to network with people. I know, I'm putting a very dry and sort of soulless word on that when it comes to corporate stuff and everything else. That's what you're most proud of. The network of people you've been able to build over time, relationships of one form or another. You don't have an active example of something you implemented in a company to solve a problem and the problem was solved. Or if the problem was not solved, what you learned from why out of, well, okay, our host is kind of aside because she's more the moderator. Out of our 3 corporate professionals here, why have we not yet been given a specific example of something they have done in their work that achieved the outcome that they wanted? Or conversely, something that they attempted that didn't work out and what they learned from it. Why is there no specificity? Even if it's just like, I can't name the company because of privacy or get specific, but at least give me a general idea. You should have something, right?
Rather than having a very superficial level with a lot of folks, because I don't know how much change I personally or our organization can do collectively in that context. And so the thing that I often say to people is that, and I really... What does change look like? All right, if you can't give us a specific corporate example, what does change look like specifically? All right. Hypothetically, company does this, and this is how the company is. And you see that, or the company sees that as a problem, and they bring you in to solve it. And the ending result of your work or the ideal outcome is what? What does that look like? At this point, I will take the most generic example, if only I'd be given an example. Really love the work of Adrienne Maree Brown about how change has to happen at the speed of trust, that if there's not trust, it's very hard and oftentimes I'd say impossible to actually initiate change at a broader scale if people don't have a base level of respect, safety, trust, and a sense of belonging to do this work.
I think change begins at the speed of whatever the overriding emotion or imperative of the moment is. You can change a lot of things real quick through fear. I don't know if anybody's noticed that over the last year. Or say, I don't know, Patriot Act. You can change a lot through fear, not necessarily trust. So it all depends on the circumstances. I know I'm being a bit cynical there, but I don't necessarily take that notion as all shiny and happy is the only way you get things done, because I know it's not.
And I also think that the fundamental unit of social change is the relationship, because if we're trying to do this work on our own, to me, that's like anti-social change because you can't do it on your own.
Social change depends on relationship. Social, you don't say.
And so for us, it's really about how do you find a sense of understanding within yourself so that you can honestly and authentically connect with others. And when you can use that as an opportunity for collective action, that's where I think change at scale happens.
Okay, so your DEI work is about self-reflection or self, I don't know, meditation? What do you do? When you go in the office in the morning, what do you do? I would love to be able to be a fly on the wall and just watch all 3 of our speakers in their busiest workday, right? Like, you know, the meetings that they have and the things they have to do. I am just direly curious to know what they do. And I have asked this of so many previous presentations for some kind of idea of what is it that you do, instead of just talking in high-minded terms and abstractions. Why is that such a common thread?
So for me, it's really about how are you connecting with people? How do you understand your own story? Rohini, I love your acknowledgement of listening for understanding, because I'm always listening for response, because you're moving so fast and you just want to be able to say, yes, I heard you, and this is what I'm thinking now too.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now. I have heard you. I have heard you all. This is what I'm thinking right now. And nothing you are saying makes any sense. It's all just gobbledygook babble. You're here to talk about careers in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And thus far, I haven't even heard a job description, which is incredible. Thank you, Mr. Tickletrunk. Authentic admission, they usually lie constantly. That's something that I've always noticed about the authenticity stuff. They say that as though everything you were doing prior is a lie, right? And let's be honest, there's a joke there. Everybody lies, or everybody deceives in a way, right? If you go to work and you behave in a particular way that you would not otherwise behave in your private life. For example, if I'm at the office, I'm probably not sitting around in my pajama pants without a shirt on, right? As I am right now, because I can do that, because I'm at home and you can do that kind of thing. So even though I'm at the office, I am technically deceiving the world into thinking I really like wearing the slacks and the dress shirt and the tie, right? That might be a deception. That might be a mild deception, but it's a deception, right? It's not a truth. I am not comfortable doing. If I was in my apex comfort, I would not be doing this, right? But it's not a lie that hurts anybody. But everybody deceives. Everybody alters their own reality a little bit, or their own truth, so to speak, to fit the situation that they're in. Everybody does it all the time, every day. Now, if I'm at the office and I'm dressed in a way that I otherwise would not be if I were at home, does that make me inauthentic as a person? I guess it depends on how you assess that. Does that make the words that come out of my mouth to my coworker less than honest? Well, I guess it depends on the conversation. So what does it mean to be authentic or authentically? I had a very specific speaker that I did a couple of videos on where she basically made authenticity a corporate religion, if you can believe it. I'm still not quite sure what that's supposed to mean, but I am always curious as to what that implies about anything that takes place in the absence of quote unquote authenticity.
But oftentimes when I do that, I miss the fullness and the beauty and the nuance of what's being shared with me. So the ability to really be present and take all that in is so critical.
What does that mean?
I love the idea of relationships in this work. I think it's...
What? I love the idea of relationships in this work. How? Relationships. That's like saying you find something fascinating. It is the most unspecific, the most diplomatic term you can say. I love relationships, right? You know, Ted Bundy had a relationship with his victims. I love relationships. Can be okay. We're coming up at the hour and a half mark, and I cannot deny I have a continuing morbid curiosity as to what is or otherwise is not going to be said next. So I may do a part 2 on this next weekend. I got to tell you, this has been entertaining of a kind, just like the waiting for Godot moment of, are we going to get there? Are we going to get there? So perhaps. But in these closing minutes, I will take questions and or comments from you in the audience. If you have anything you'd like to say, I don't know that I'll have an answer. Or should I say, I might have an answer. It might not be the one you want. Lexi Mad said, I want Scribelight to wear a top hat and tails to work. Well, you know, truth be told, I don't actually, or, you know, when I was going to the office before all this stuff happened, I wasn't actually wearing a suit and a tie and that kind of thing. Not in the company that I work for now. The previous company I worked for, the big corporate company, yeah, it was a dress shirt, slacks, dress shoes, the whole 9 yards. But given the relatively laid-back nature of my current company, on those occasions where I have the opportunity to dress up, like really dress up snazzy, I go full out. Like if we're going to have the company Christmas lunch or holiday lunch, whatever, or Halloween or what. Yeah, I get on my vest, my tie, my slacks, my dress shoes, get my hair all like, niced up and everything, and look all fancy dancy. Oh man, any excuse to dress up, I grab it these days because it's not really any opportunities to do it much anymore. Plus, when I was doing my live action vampire role play, costuming was always a big thrill. Mr. Chicken Trust Scribelight, what is the circumference of a moose? Pabst. Blue ribbon. Let's see. Matt Barnes, Scribelight. Middlebury is a small, pricey private college in Vermont, best known for the attack on author Charles Murphy by students for giving a talk on free speech. Town is covered in BLM signs. Charles Murphy. Was it Murphy or Murray? Because I kind of remember that. Was it? Maybe I'm thinking of a different person. Okay, town is covered in BLM signs. All right. Yeah, I don't know Middlebury College. I can believe. I mean, most. If you can believe it, I've done several videos on several different colleges, both private and otherwise, and some of the things that they push and or believe and or do not tolerate or whatever. And I can believe it. Let's see. Septus Wolf says, "Don't forget the cane Scribelight." Actually, yes, I have. I've got a shepherd's hook cane. Actually, I got a couple of them. I don't have a like a silver tipped kind of thing, walking stick, very fancy deal. I always wanted to get the one from the original Wolfman movie with was it Lon Chaney Jr. and that wolf's head cane with the wolf on the top, the silver cane. I always thought that was really cool. That was like the first time I ever saw like a really cool walking stick when I was a kid, and I was like, oh boy, I want that. I think you can probably find that pretty easily these days, but all the same, I don't need it yet. But when or if, I should hope, I get to the point in life where I need a cane, I'm going to make sure I get a fancy one for dang sure. No, none of that aluminum, lightweight, padded thing you get at like Rite Aid or whatever. No, I'm going to get like an official cane. That's right. Check your logic. Didn't you say you'd wear a dress shirt and tie if you did face cam, Scarlett? Yes. If I ever do, I mean, I'm not going to... If you hadn't noticed, I try to put on a bit of a show, just a bit. So if I was actually going to end up doing a face cam or start doing live stuff like that, as often as was conceivable and reasonable, I would make sure that I'm at least well presented. But yeah, no, if I was going to do it on a regular basis, yeah, it'd be tie, vest, and I'd have to have a whole setup, and I'd have to learn camera stuff. That one of the advantages of not having to show my face is I don't have to learn about like setting up a camera or lighting and all that. But rest assured, if it ever came to that point, just by obsession, I would do my best to figure it all out over time, like everything else. Let's see, a couple more, and then we will wrap this up. Spudgun, Scribelight, these people are the greatest scam going. They talk absolutely nothing. How do they get paid for this? See, I try to give the benefit of the doubt that when you've got a whole bunch of people talking shop amongst each other, there's going to be times where there's going to be unavoidable shorthand, right? It just you can't dodge that. Some things are never going to be explicitly explained or everything else because you've got a whole bunch of people that already know it. And unless they're in a very, I guess, educational environment, they may not get into specifics all the time about everything or explain themselves in every level. However, like I said, if they're asked for a specific example, why can they never seem to give one? And this isn't the first panel talk on diversity, equity, inclusion I've done or whatever, as many of you know. But almost to a one, when it gets down to brass tacks, like what did you do? Or what did you implement? Or what was the state of things before and how are the state of things after you left? It is a rare day where I ever hear anything like that. So how do they get paid for it? Well, it's because both the problem is nebulous and how you describe the successes are also nebulous. because there is no specificity. I mean, if somebody went into a company and said, hey, look at bylaw number 32 in your employee conduct books, where it says only white people shall drink from the water cooler, you need to change that, right? You could point, that'd be a very, very explicit and specific example of going into a company, finding a problem that was buried somewhere in the bylaws and solving it, right? I mean, it'd be a ridiculous thing, I hope, to find in today's day and age, but you could point to that and say, this is a problem and I solved it. Why don't we hear that here? The question mark over that says a lot than anything that isn't actually being said, if that makes any sense. Thank you, chat. More. This was agonizing and wonderful. I don't feel smarter, but I feel wiser somehow. Well, if nothing else, as I've said since I think the beginning of the channel, I listen, as they said here, and I agree with them. I listen to understand, or at least attempt to understand. And even if I don't learn anything, insofar as like nobody here gave a specific example, right? I still don't know what they do or how they do it or how they've achieved it. But there is knowledge to be had or suspicion to be gained in the lack of an answer. And even if I don't agree with somebody by the time I've listened to them, at least I've given it a fair shot to try to understand where they're coming from. Right? And I may continue to do so next week with a part 2, but you'll have to wait and see because I may change my mind, which I am free to do. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this sojourn into abstraction. I hope you all have a very, very happy, fun, and safe 4th of July. If you'd like to hear more from me or Satsu 2 Cents, you can find the two of us tomorrow night on Satsu's 2 Cents' channel, and that's Monday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for The Lords of the Night, where Satsu and I will look at the news of the day, news stories you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. Comments like, from Chat More, thank you again. I learned that my psyche can withstand a lot more than I previously thought. There you go. There you go. Yeah, Chat More has hit it on the head, literally and figuratively, because by watching my shows, we all build mental resilience. Yes, that is what we do here. Thank you, Chat More. Everyone, again, thank you for joining me. I hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.